Today we're going to be talking about the power of the Fog of War, and I like to refer to this as vision manipulation. It's not just about having good wards or destroying enemy wards. There's a lot more to it that you can do other than just adding vision and removing vision. The first thing that you should do is add a like to the video. That way I know you guys are enjoying the content. And make sure to subscribe and ring that bell so that you don't miss any of our future videos. Let me ask you a question about the key word in vision manipulation. When I say manipulation, what do you think about? This entire video is going to be going over exactly how to play around the fog of war that your enemy has and how to avoid making mistakes around the fog of war that you have. Let's set up an example. Your enemy places a control ward in the pixel brush on the top side of the map, and you know that that is there. You know that they no longer have fog of war in that area. But think about what that control ward does with the fog of war. It makes them think that they're safe from ganks around that area. However, understanding this, you should be able to walk around the vision that they have and make plays on them that they feel shouldn't be able to happen. Obviously, if you have mobility, it can go really crazy because you can like niddly hop over a wall and then gank them from by their red buff and they won't expect you to come from there at all. And there's a lot of ways that you can do this if you understand where the enemy has warded. You're manipulating what they think that is safe because of the wards that you know exist. This is really important because you can do this all the time. If you happen to have a ward in a bush and you see your enemy place a ward in there, then think about how you can walk around that area and act on the fact that they have vision there to surprise them. Back to that control ward example in the pixel brush. You have a lot of options of getting around there. Obviously, in the early game, there's not as many because the towers are up and they'll spot you out trying to do some stuff. And minion waves also complicate things too. But to set some examples, you can walk towards the enemy raptors and sneak behind where that control ward is. Unless they have a ward in the lane or minions that spot you out, then there's no way for them to know that you're there. You've effectively maneuvered around the vision that they have and you're manipulating the fact they think the area is safe. When you're in this situation, you can go sit up by the enemy red buff and just wait for them to come there. When they show up, they're gonna have no idea that you're there, and you could just insta-kill them out of the bush if you have a bunch of burst, or, throw out some CC, lock them down, and then kill them slowly. Whatever it is that your champion does, you're free to do it because they have no way to see it coming. If you're not convinced that playing around the fog of war like this is really powerful, let me give you some more examples. You and your team just took the enemy's mid inhibitor. You guys shoved the wave all the way into the nexus, and all of you are perfectly healthy. 2 of the enemy team members are dead, and a few of them are just respawning. Baron and Dragon are both down, but Dragon is spawning soon. What do you do from here? A lot of people might just default to running towards the Dragon. That's fine, but it's not the best thing that you can do. If you were thinking maybe you walk into the enemy jungle, take their camps, and then go to the Dragon, that's better and definitely a good option. However, the thing that you aren't thinking about is just waiting around the wall near the mid inhibitor. If you sweep while you're on the way out of the enemy base and notice that they have no vision, they have no way to see around that wall unless they walk around it, or maybe the support wards it because they anticipate this sort of play. And you as a team of 5 can just sit there and the first person you see just gets absolutely dumpstered. This is such a powerful technique that it's essentially like sitting in a bush that doesn't even exist, right? Because if your opponents are walking close to you and they can't see you, usually that means you're in a bush that they don't have warded. But at this point, you're sitting around a wall near their base where they feel very safe, and then you just spring out and absolutely annihilate them from nowhere. One of the most pivotal examples is across from the Baron or Dragon walls, directly near the mouth of the river that heads up to blue buff on both sides. If you sit right at that wall while your team is doing Baron and you know that the enemy team does not have vision of you, they are going to come out of the mouth of that ramp right next to you. And if you're a tank or even just anybody who has CC or really high burst, you can just destroy people immediately and guarantee an objective or extra kills. I can't stress this enough. This is a really powerful tool, and you could do it everywhere. It just requires a little bit of creativity. You could do it around top lane and bot lane, and around the walls in mid lane. You can do it deep in the enemy jungle near their red buff, or even by blue buff. There are tons of options, but you need to make sure that you recognize them, and they change all the time, because you have to understand your enemy's vision and what they can and cannot see. Because if you get spotted walking into the enemy jungle to do something like this on a ward, well, chances are they're probably not just gonna face check you without expecting it. And when you lose that element of surprise, it goes way worse for you, because sometimes you'll be at a numbers disadvantage when you don't even expect it, and that surprise is turned onto you. If you're looking for other powerful skills or tools to help you learn, improve, and get better ranks in League, then I really recommend that you guys check out our website, GameLeap.com. We have tons of content, and all of it is made by challenger level players like myself. We're always working to bring you guys more and more content so that you guys can reach your next highest rank. If you happen to see something that we don't have on the website, whether it be a specific champion that you want more or a guide on, whatever it might be, let us know. That way we can get to working on it so you guys have the best chance at reaching your next highest rank. Now that you have a better understanding of how to use the Fog of War, where to use it, and just how powerful it can be, let's talk about how to avoid mistakes that you can make on the Fog of War that you have. The first thing that you should look out for is exactly what paths your opponent can take to avoid your vision entirely. Assuming that you don't just have 0 wards on the map, you can actually really effectively limit the ways your opponents can play on the map with like 2 wards. When you're placing wards, the most important information is where your opponents aren't. And if you know that they aren't in the river that's above you, well, then they have to be somewhere below you. Obviously, this is a really generic example, but that's how you want to be thinking and what you want to look out for when placing your wards. Does it give you information that lets you know, oh, the person can't be here, so they must be coming from this other way, and there's only 3 or 4 or however many places that they can go to get there. Once you understand how to limit your opponents in this way, then their ability to use vision manipulation against you is severely hampered. Now, that's not to say that it doesn't exist or that you're gonna die because you have those 2 good wards that you need to have a great idea of where the enemy team is. No, that's just not the case, right? Because it's very difficult to set that vision up in the first place, especially when you're behind. This is where the Fog of War is the most prevalent. Like I mentioned in that example towards the beginning of the video, you just took the enemy inhib and you sit on the other side of that wall. There is a 0% chance that that area is warded at that time. And that's when it's the scariest and hardest to overcome. Usually you have to play as a team or with a tank at the very front in order to overcome this fact, because you can't just face check as a squishy support or mid laner or whatever you might be playing and get away with it if the enemy knows you're there and are waiting for you. When you're in this kind of situation, the blue trinket is your savior. If you are in a position where you are having a pretty good idea that the enemy is on Baron, but you are so scared to face check or even just to put a ward nearby in the bushes, that is where you use the blue ward to spot your opponents out. That way, with the brief vision that you have, you can walk in, throw down a ward, and work from there. Because once you get one down, the next one becomes much easier to place. And you work your vision outwards like that as you need it. Make sure that you don't just charge in recklessly to the fog for no reason. That's just a complete mistake. And if you get away with it, yeah, you might feel good, but most of the time, you're just gonna die. Now that you're using your blue wards intelligently and you're not just rushing into your death, what's next? Well, let me introduce you to your best friend, skill shots and abilities that give vision. Oh man, if you have these on your team, you won't have any problems. Well, I shouldn't say any, but you're gonna have less problems like this in those games. Say you have a Karthus on your team. Did you know that a Karthus wall gives vision in any bush that it passes through? How about Caitlyn traps? Did you know that they briefly give vision around them when you throw them in a bush or just over a wall in general? Or how about Gragas Q when he rolls out the barrel? All of these give sight around them when you use them. Even if you don't have champions who directly give you sight by using their abilities, if you have a skill shot that stops on the first enemy hit or that does something after it hits somebody or has a really pronounced sound effect when it hits somebody, if you throw those into a bush and hit something, well, you know that somebody's somebody's there. It doesn't have to give you vision, you don't need to know exactly who's there, you just need to worry that somebody is there in that moment when you hit them. There are tons of interactions that you can look out for to let you know where enemy champions are. If you throw out a skill shot and you have Airy or Comet, and you notice that all of a sudden your rune goes off, well, somebody's there. Or maybe you throw out a skill shot that has a really loud sound, like Caitlyn Q when it hits an enemy. If it hits them in a bush or in the Fog of War in general, it'll make the sound, and you should notice that somebody is there. Maybe you're playing Ezreal and you throw a Q into a bush and all of a sudden you see it stop short. Or maybe you happen to notice that at the very tip of its range, it makes that hit confirm sound effect. Somebody's there. Play accordingly when you know this information. You don't have to see them the entire time that they're there. You don't need a ward on top of them. You already know where they are. You may have noticed that all of these examples that I'm giving really have to do with brushes, and that is why the vision manipulation that we talked about around the walls that don't have bushes is so incredibly impactful. People aren't going to expect or try to predict that somebody is there, so they're not going to throw out those vision-seeking skill shots or skill shots to check that area in general, and you'll catch people by surprise over and over again. With all that being said, if you're trying to win your games over and over again, I highly recommend that you check out our website, GameLeap.com. We've got everything checked off on the resume. Champion-specific guides, they're there. Generic skill guides, they're there. Lane-specific guides, they're there. Challenger-level content creators, done. It's like having your own team of challengers there to coach you. If you're looking to get the best edge that you possibly can in your ranked games, make sure that you check it out in the description below. If you've made it this far, thanks for watching the whole video. As always, my name is Ace Windstorm, and I will see you all later.